Hi there, everybody. Thanks for joining us on our open book tonight. Very good to be with you, Karen, Maggie, Catherine, Carol, John O'Hara, Dodie, Jeremy Sicking, Mr. Dickens, John Mahoney, Marianne, Ray Padilla Francoeur. Thanks very much, everyone, for joining us. Look, we've been observing once again the anniversary of humankind landing on the moon, the Apollo 11, Buzz, Neil. I was a kid when I bought this, Norman Mailer of A Fire on the Moon. It's the paperback. I think we have the hard cover over there, too. I almost said hardcore. But, well, Norman Mailer. By the way, hello to our friends at Maine Public.
How do you feel
Doing
about
great job.
public radio? I love it.
I love it, too.
I'm a fan.
But,
The mug says it all.
So which mug do you prefer? Sorry. In any event, our friends there, always good to be up there. Norman Mailer took it upon himself to write when I say first person account of the landing on the moon and the moon mission, he wasn't there, but he was at Mission Control in Houston. And it might help us to recount, hi there, Lori Turney. It might help us to recount what Buzz Aldrin did in the first minutes they were on the moon. Norman Mailer writes, the moon was beneath them, hardly more than the height of a 10-foot diving board beneath them. They were in the domain of a presence again. How much like magnetism lunar gravity must have felt. And then he quotes Buzz Aldrin on the radio saying, this is the LEM pilot, Lunar Excursion Module pilot. I'd like to take this opportunity to ask every person listening in, whoever and wherever they may be, to pause for a moment and contemplate the events of the past few hours and to give thanks in his or her way. And in the silence, do you know this? And in the silence, Aldrin took out bread, wine, and the chalice that he has brought aboard in his personal preference kit, and he put them on the little table in front of the abort guidance section of the computer. And he read some passages from the Bible, and he celebrated communion. A strange picture of religious intensity. There is, of course, no clue in Aldrin's immediate words. They are by now tuned to precisely one would expect. I would like to have observed just how the wine poured in that environment, but wasn't pertinent at that particular time. It wasn't important how it got into the cup. It was important only to get it there and not spill, we may assume, the blood of the Lord. I offered some private prayers, but I find now that thoughts, feelings come into my memory instead of words. I was not so selfish as to include my family in those prayers at the moment, nor so spacious as to include the fate of the world. I was thinking more of our particular task and the challenge and the opportunity that have been given us. I ask people to offer thanks in their own way, and it is my hope that people will keep this whole event in their minds and see beyond minor details and technical achievements to a deeper human meaning behind it all. Challenge, a quest, the human need to do these things, and the need to recognize that we are all one mankind under God. Yet his recollections are near to comic in their banality, writes Norman Mailer, but one gets a picture of the strong-nosed, strong-armed gymnast in his spacesuit, deep in prayer in the crowded closet space of the LEM. While Armstrong, the mystic, the statue of Buddha in his living room, is next to him. And who knows what partial or unwilling communion Armstrong, so private in his mind, that when a stranger tried to talk to him one day, on a bus, he picked up a book to read. There before his partner, Aldrin prayed, light, lunar gravity, new in his limbs, eyes grew closed. Can we assume the brain of his inner vision expanded to the dimensions of a church, the loft of a cathedral? Aldrin, prodigy of effort on Gemini 12, whose pulse after hour of work in space had shot up when he made a Veterans Day message to the ground. Patriotism had the power of stroke for Aldrin, and invocation was his harmony. Tribal chief, he prayed to the powers who had brought him there, whose will he would fulfill, God, the earth, the moon, and himself. All for this instant part to the lofty engine of the universe. And in that eccentric giant of character, that conservative of all roots of the family trees, who was now ripping up roots for the ages. That man whose mother's name was Moon was there in a single question, whose lament might even suggest if the mission were ill-conceived, or even a work of art designed by the devil, then all the prayers and all the good men were nothing but a burden upon the Lord, who in order to reply would be forced to work in the mills of Satan or leave the prayers of his flock in space. But not likely. Aldrin did not seem a man for thoughts like that, but then his mind was a mystery wrapped in the winding sheet of a computer with billions of bits. Later, Armstrong would say that first hour on the moon was hardly a time for long thoughts. We had such specific jobs to do. Of course, the sights were simply magnificent, beyond any visual experience that I've ever been exposed to. Aldrin would later describe it as a unique, almost mystical environment. In fact, there is an edge of the unexplained to their reactions. Their characteristic matter-of-fact response is overcome occasionally by swoops of hyperbole. To everyone's slight surprise, they were almost 2 hours late for their EVA, extravehicular activity. That means walking on the moon. Even I remember that. The estimate of time was off by close to 50%. For astronauts, that's an error comparable to a carpenter mistaking an 8-foot stud for a 12-foot piece. People in some occupations have that close ability to estimate time. With astronauts whose every day in a simulator was a day laid out, in the measure of a timeline, the estimate of time elapsed has to be acute. Armstrong and Aldrin had consistently fulfilled their tasks in less time than was allotted. Now, curiously, they fell a bit behind. There were unexpected problems, of course. It took longer to bleed the pressure out of the lunar module than had been anticipated. And the cooling units in the backpacks were sluggish at first in operation. But whether from natural excitement, natural anxiety, or an unconscious preoccupation with lunar phenomenon so subtle that it is just at the edge of their senses, any extract from the transcript at this point where they're helping to adjust their portable life support system on each other's backs, there's a real lack of enunciation. Nowhere else do the NASA stenographers have as much difficulty with where one voice ends and another begins. Got it? Okay, gobble, let me do that for you. Inaudible. Mark, I wrote a vowel. Garble. Okay, I get to do this for a little while. Okay, all of that garbled. Locked, unlocked. Did you put, oh, wait a minute, should we garbled? Roger, garbled. I'll try it in the middle. All right, check my garbled. Valves, vertical, both vertical. That's too vertical. Okay, garbled. Locked and double lock. Okay, mismarked. Sure wish I could have shaved last night. Public Affairs Officer. That was Buzz Aldrin. The hint is faint enough, but the hint exists. Something was conceivably interfering with their sense of order. Could it have been the lunar gravity? Clock time was a measure which derived from a pendulum and spiral springs. Clock time was anchored right into the tooth of Earth's gravity. This is actually an interesting speculation, isn't it? So a time might yet be coming when psychologists, not geologists, would be conducting experiments on the moon. Did lunar gravity have the power to shift the human sense of time? Armstrong was connected at last to the PLSS. I'm not sure what that is. Life support system, I think, right? Yeah. He was drawing oxygen from the pack he carried on his back, but the hatch door would not open. The pressure would not go low enough in the LEM. Down near a level of 1 pound per square inch, the last bit of man-created atmosphere in Eagle seemed to cling to its constituency, reluctant to enter the vacuums of the moon. But they did not know if they could get the hatch door open with the vacuum on one side and even small pressure on the other. It was taking longer than they thought. Well, it was not a large concern since there would be other means to open it. Redundancies pervaded throughout. Nonetheless, the concern must have intruded. Now, intolerably comic they would appear if they came all the way and then blocked before a door they couldn't crack open. That thought had to put one drop of perspiration on the back of even an astronaut's neck. Besides, it would have been embarrassing to begin so late. The world of television was watching, and the astronauts had exhibited as much sensitivity to an audience as any bride on the aisle. It was not until 9:40 at night, Houston time, same time in Chicago.
Really?
Yeah. Well, Chicago is the center of the
Earth?
Yeah, the universe.
Yeah.
Actually. So
I've
that
heard
would
something
be,
about that.
they're waiting for prime time in Chicago. They say Houston, but it's,
Hmm.
they mean,
They have a problem.
the
Chicago
Earth.
does not.
Right. Thank you.
Got it.
Thank you. Yeah. Not until 9:40 at night, Houston time, that they got the hatch open at last. In the heat of running almost 2 hours late and ensconced in the armor of a man-sized spaceship, could they have still felt an instant of awe as they looked out at that open hatch at a panorama of theater? The sky is black, but the ground is brightly lit, bright as footlights on the floor of a dark theater. It was a blackened midnight sky, yet on the moon ground. You could almost go out in your shirt sleeves and get a suntan. Aldrin would say. I remember thinking, gee, if I didn't know where I was, I could believe that somebody had created this environment somewhere out in the West and given us another simulation to work in. Everywhere on that pitted flat were shadows dark as the sky above, shadows dark as mine shafts. What a struggle to push out from that congested cabin. Now twice congested in their bulky wham suits, no feeling of obstacle against their flesh, their sense of touch dead and numb, spaceman body manipulated out into the moon like an upright piano, turned by movers on the corner of the stairs. You're lined up on the platform. Put your left foot to the right a little bit. Okay, that's good. Roll left. Armstrong was finally on the porch. Could it be, with any sense of an alien atmosphere, receiving the 15-layer encapsulations of the pack and suit in his back? Slowly, Armstrong climbed down the ladder. He must have felt like a boy descending on the rungs of a wall of an abandoned well, or was it Jack down the stalk? And there he was, on the bottom, on the footpad of the leg of the LEM, a metal plate perhaps 3 feet across. Inches away was the soil of the moon. At first, he jumped up again to the lowest rung of the ladder. A couple of hours later, at the end of the EVA, extravehicular assignment, conceivably exhausted, the jump from the ground to the rung 3 feet up might be difficult in the stiff and heavy spacesuit, so he tested it now. It takes, said Armstrong, a pretty good little jump. And now, with the television working and some fraction of the world peering at the murky image of this instant, poised between the end of one history and the beginning of another, Armstrong said quietly, I'm at the foot of the ladder now. The Lem footpads are only depressed on the surface about 1 or 2 inches, although the surface appears to be very, very fine-grained as you get close to it. It's almost like a powder. One of Armstrong's rare confessions of uneasiness is focused later on this moment. I don't recall my particular emotion or feeling other than a little caution. A desire to be sure, he said, it was safe to put my weight on that surface outside of the eagle's footpad. I can imagine that. You're about to step on a foot, never been done before in history, and you're, well, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah. If you see somebody else's footprint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did, Norman Mailer asks, did his foot tingle in the heavy lunar overshoe? I'm going to step off the Lem now. Did something in him shudder at the touch of the new ground? Or did he draw a sweet strength from the balls of his feet? Nobody was necessarily ever going to know. That's one small step for a man, said Armstrong. One giant leap for mankind. He had joined the ranks of the forever quoted. Patrick Henry, Henry Stanley, and Admiral Dewey move over for Neil Armstrong. Norman Mailer's of A Fire on the Moon. Didn't want the anniversary to go by without mentioning that. So thanks very much for being with us tonight in our open book. Thanks for all the nice messages. And by the way, holding this main public, what do we call this?
It's a travel mug.
Travel mug, yeah. I also am drawn by this. Inspiring, entertaining, trusted.
Like Norman Mailer.
I don't
know about the trusted part.
About the trusted part, yeah. So thanks for being with us. Tomorrow night, we are going to have Chris Sweeney.
Yes, we are. Lots of guests this week.
Who's going to talk about the wonderful book that he's done, The Feather Detective, about Roxy Laybourne, the ornithologist, forensic ornithologist.
Yes.
Let the Law and Order music chime in. So,
dun, 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 dun.
So thanks very much for being with us tonight and our open book, and thanks for all the nice messages about what's going on. Take care. Good night.